Hi and welcome back. It is cold. The second cold front has come in for the season. So we are now in second winter. It should get into the 20s here tonight and then stay cold for the rest of the week. And then next week, we'll see what we can do about doing something else. Pardon the dog. Her food is in here. This week we're going to be restocking some canned beans. 2 years ago I canned quarts of charro beans and we're on our last jar. So I'm going to go ahead and make my version of charro beans, but it is a pork and bean mixture along with some other things. This is not your mom's pork and beans at all, unless you're my kid. So let's get started. Now you can make this in any fashion that you wish. You can make it in a pot. You can make it in a crock pot. You can do your Instapot. It doesn't matter how it's made. It's all going to mix the same. We're going to go ahead and can this. But we're not going to cook it first. We're going to put everything in here kind of raw. The meat is cooked. The bone broth is already done. The beans, on the other hand, we're going to put in dried and dehydrated. There are also some other things we're going to put in here to get rid of the dehydrated foods that we have because they need to be reused up. I have some dehydrated bell peppers, hot wax peppers, some dehydrated tomatoes that need to be used up, and apple. We're just going to add a little bit of apple to this to give it a little bit of a sweetness. Other ingredients that we have besides the beans, we're going to add a little bit of celery, some leeks. So I have them all nice and cleaned and chopped. And I've got a thing of hatch peppers that we're going to add as well for the hotness. I've got some leftover pork roast from the other night. We're going to use this to be able to put into our thing. Plus a whole bunch of other spices. The main spices that we're going to use are going to be cumin, paprika, salt, and pepper. Those are the main things for the pork and beans. Now you can add a bay leaf if you wish. I am going to because, that helps with the indigestion, so to speak, to put it nicely. Along with some other spices that I'm going to go ahead and rummage through. This is the last of our stocks and the last of our fresh stocks because what I've noticed is that 2 years ago, I planted parsley seeds all over one of my gardens. Never got any until now. And they are all coming up. So I have a whole garden bed full of parsley coming. So I need to get my spices in order. I've gone ahead and added a few more things. I've got beans, a whole bunch of different types of beans. I've got navy beans. I've got Maricopa beans, red beans, pinto beans. I've got more beans in my storage. We're going to use what I've got. And it looks like probably navy beans and pinto beans. We're going to make 7 jars and then have one for dinner. Two tablespoons of beans, or of pinto beans, in each jar, at least until we're done, because I don't think I have enough. I've only got enough for 4 jars. Let's go ahead and fill the rest up with navy beans. Now, I know you probably can't see much of this. We'll get through it. If I were to just make a jar of beans, pressure can it for 75 minutes, and have the whole thing just beans, I would be putting in a half a cup of beans. Because we're adding everything else to this, we're going to be adding 4 tablespoons of beans. The reason for this is because the beans are going to expand, but we're going to have so much other stuff in there to absorb the moisture that we don't want everything in here to burn because of the lack of moisture. So in the jars I put the pinto beans in, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons extra of the navy beans. And that's used up almost all the navy beans that I have. This is a really good way of using up what you have in your stores to make more stores. And then eating your stores throughout the year. Also, with the price of groceries, I have a feeling that bean recipes are going to be very popular. Next comes the bay leaves. And get some small ones in here, because if you get a really big one in there, the bay leaf taste is actually going to overpower it. And yes, bay leaves do have a taste. They're kind of eucalyptusy. Got one in each one. And here come the spices. Now, for each jar, I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of fresh garlic. One-quarter teaspoon of paprika. And you can scale this up. This right here, this is a pint. It is 2 cups and 2 servings. So if you were feeding 4 people, it would be 8 teaspoons or 8 tablespoons of beans, half a teaspoon of garlic, a bay leaf, quarter teaspoon of paprika, onion powder, I'm putting in half a teaspoon. Notice most everything here is dehydrated. That's because we're going to be adding a lot of stock to this. We're not adding so much fresh stuff. 1/4 teaspoon of cumin. Okay, pinch of salt. Pinch is about 1/16 of a teaspoon. And a pinch of pepper. One thing about canning with spices is that you have to know which ones will overpower. The pepper will not overpower the dish, but if you add something like sage in here, it's going to turn bitter. Sage and oregano are not good canning herbs. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and go into our dehydrated stores. Here is the dehydrated apple. That is going to be a half a teaspoon. Dehydrated bell pepper, I'm just going to eyeball it. A couple pieces in each one. Just remember, we still have to put the meat and the stock in. Okay, the hot banana pepper, I'm only going to put 1 in. One slice. That one's got 2. Also, some of the dehydrated tomatoes. Now, this is all going to absorb a lot of that stock whenever I put it in here, along with the beans and everything else. So you don't want to add too many of these. I'm going to go ahead and start with 2. I'm probably going to put 3 or 4 in here because I like tomatoes in with my beans. I'm guessing this is what constitutes as pork and beans? Only because, I mean, think about it. Our pork and beans that we grew up with was tomato sauce, beans, and pork fat. That's it. We're going a little bit beyond with this. Some hatch chilies. I'm not going to be using the whole jar, but I am going to be using some, about half the jar. This is a 1 cup jar. It's a half a pint. Depends on how hot you like your chilies. Now this is already roasted and canned, so some of this hotness has been taken out because there's a little bit of seeds in here, but all the skin and ribs and everything have already been taken out. I think one more over here. I usually use these for enchiladas and tamales. Or my tamale attempts, I should say. Okay, we're going to go ahead and add some celery. Just divide it up between the jars. going to add the leeks, divided into jars. Okay, notice that they're about halfway full. There's a lot of space between everything, so don't worry about it looking like it's about almost full. It's not. We are going to go ahead and add some of the cooked pork roast. You can add it raw if you have some of the pork stew cubes. It'll still cook. This just ensures that everything is nice and cooked and sealed. And I'm putting some pretty big chunks in here because whenever I cooked it, I did not cut any of the meat. So it is true pulled pork. Grandpa made a comment the other day of how most restaurants, whenever they serve pulled pork, they actually cut it up. That's not true pulled pork. Pulled pork is something that is pulled together and shredded, not using a knife. At least that's our belief. After you've put the meat in the jars, wash your hands. We're going to go ahead and use the pork stock we canned. Try to get this out of the way for other things to be stored. And you want to fill this all the way up. To 1 inch headspace. Just like that. And you want to debubble. So get out your Chinese stick. Your Chinese stick. You'll mix that all around. And add a little bit more stock if needed. Because right now it kind of looks like soup, but with all the dehydrated stuff in there, the spices and the beans, this is going to come out pretty thick. Now, to serve this, you can either serve as it is. Let me repeat that again. You can serve it as it is, or you can put this on top of rice, serve with potatoes. It's really up to you. Okay, I've got them all nice and canned up, finger tight rings, nude lids, and we're going to go ahead and put these in the pan. I've got just enough for one batch. All 7 fill up to about here with water. They're about 2 inches up from the jar, so if you measure this, it's about up to here on your jars. Okay, initially, we are going to go ahead and bring this up to a boil. But whenever it does and we put the weight on it, we're going to bring the temperature way down to like a medium level. That way they pressurize and cook without going too hard and siphon all the juice out of the jars, because you want as much of that moisture in there to cook the beans. With the magic of YouTube, I have a new shirt because the other one got really dirty. You want to process these for 75 minutes for pints, 90 minutes for quarts. If you're using jelly jars for single serve, go ahead and do those for 75 minutes, but lower the temperature even more. You want a nice rolling constant pressure in the pressure canner. It does take a little bit of practice to do this, but you can go ahead and do this, or just use the pints and have leftovers. All right, so in the middle of this, we had a blowout. This is the reason why pressure canning safety is so important, because sometimes you'll have a jar blow like this or crack. It'll bring out everything. The rest of them are okay. If you take a look at that, that's what 4 tablespoons of beans looks like, rehydrated in a jar. So like I said, you don't need so many beans, but I've got a lot of cleanup. Well, I have a mess to clean up, and I'm guessing we're not having dinner tonight. I'll make something else. But that's the reason why we have pressure canning safety. I do have a video. I think I made it at the beginning of the year. Pressure canning safety. What to do, what not to do. What this did is that the jar busted open, and then it broke the seal on the canner, which it released all the pressure all at once. I do need to reprocess what I have left, and I'll go ahead and do that off camera. I just need to make sure everything cools down, cleans up, and then redo it. By the time you see this video, it will be released on the same day that TikTok goes dark. I am sorry for all the people who are on TikTok. I know that that is livelihood for a lot of people. I was never on TikTok, so it doesn't affect me, but I can understand the situation. Okay, if you're coming over from TikTok and food talk, all the talks, welcome to my channel. And hopefully we'll be able to have a community here just as strong. Thank you for joining. Hope you enjoyed. And we'll see you next time.